Today, we are going to walk through and talk about Oakville's historic Erchless Estate. However, before we begin our walk today, let's set the scene with some historic context. In 1827, William Chisholm purchased 960 acres of uncleared land from the Crown at the mouth of the 16-Mile Creek. But long before that purchase, archaeological evidence and indigenous history indicate centuries of human activity in this area. In 1827, the land was deeply forested with many oak trees. The early focus was on developing the harbor. Oakville's east and west piers were built as early as 1828, and although modernized over time, they still remain visible today. Sawmills and gristmills were constructed between 1830 and 1833. Also by 1833, the town was mapped into blocks, some subdivided into smaller, more affordable lots. When William acquired Block 83, now the south end of the estate, from James King in 1837, it was intended for village business due to its prime harbor location. The Chisholm family had already begun buying the 8 lots in Block 53, the north end, but it didn't own all of them until 1898. William financed his ambitions through various enterprises: a tavern, a sawmill, a gristmill, and as early as 1828, he ran the Oakville establishment, a merchant and ship chandlery at 115 William Street with partner Joel Smith. He also served as customs officer and postmaster while overseeing the development of the 16-Mile Creek Harbor. By 1834, Oakville was an official port of entry into Upper Canada. A first-generation custom house was likely built around this time on what is now the Erchless Estate to collect duties and enforce trade laws. As a port of entry, Oakville conducted maritime trade with the U.S. and became a minor stop on the Underground Railway. Escaped slaves crossed Lake Ontario on ships, including those of Captain Robert Wilson, who helped many reach freedom. Storage sheds once stood here, used by farmers, merchants, and ship captains to move goods in and out of the harbor. Oakville's first post office opened in 1835 at the southwest corner of Lakeshore Road and Navy Street. William Chisholm was the first postmaster. The building still stands, but it was moved to Lakeside Park in 1952. By 1837, the original Oakville Lighthouse was built to mark the harbor entrance. A storm destroyed it in 1886. A new one was built by 1889. That second lighthouse stood until 1960, when it was moved to the Oakville Yacht Squadron and replaced with the current structure. Also in 1837, Oakville's first brick building was constructed here. It is part of the Erchless Estate's north wing. Originally used for storage, likely for goods, letters, or parcels bound for ships, it later served many purposes. The Chisholms didn't own it until 1839. William and Rebecca Chisholm lived in a number of different places before moving into a 12-room farmhouse in Nelson Township while Oakville developed. But they moved to Oakville in 1838 into a rented house at Lakeshore and Thomas Street, which burned down in 1839. Afterward, they moved into the 2-story brick building with some of their younger children. Their son, Robert Kerr Chisholm, also known as R.K., then 20, had already been living there since the age of 16. This was also the time that William Chisholm deeded to his son, Robert Kerr Chisholm, the property on which he ran his general store, on what is now 115 William Street, Block 83, and his customs operations. R.K. was also appointed deputy for the posts of both Collector of Customs and Postmaster. Tragically, William declared bankruptcy in 1842 and died shortly after at the age of 54. With Oakville's population around 500, he only saw the beginnings of his vision realized. His legacy passed to R.K., who carried on his work. Today, we will start our historic walk of the Erchless Estate at the bottom of Navy Street looking west. The road on the left down to the harbor is much the same as it was back in 1828, except of course it no longer carries horses and carts down to or back from the waiting ships, and it is paved. Merchants and ship's captains would have stopped at the buildings on Lot 83 in the late 1800s to conduct their harbor business. It was a main commercial hub for the village of Oakville. Also, down to the left at the end of the pier, you can see the lighthouse we talked about earlier. As we walk up to the wrought iron gate that was added around 1858, along with the stone wall on the left, we see some of the beautiful gardens that were lovingly cared for by William's widow and Robert's mother, Rebecca, and all of the subsequent owners. In fact, it was said that Rebecca died near these gates tending for the gardens in 1865 and may still haunt the area from time to time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In 1856, Robert decided to expand the brick building. This is when the 1.5 midsection was added along with the upper and lower porches. He also tore down the original custom house that had been in the area since about 1834. Unfortunately, there are no known pictures of the original customs house. He built the new one you see on your right, just in front of the gate. The Bank of Toronto occupied part of the new customs house building, as did the bank manager who lived in the new building from 1856 until it was boarded up in 1910. One other interesting feature of the customs house can be seen from the Navy Street side. There is a projecting section detail that may have added to differentiate the space between the customs house and the bank. Customs agents here would have collected fees and inspected cargo for contraband, like the 1863 seizure of 200 smuggled cigars. The Bank of Toronto loaned farmers and merchants money to buy seed, building materials, and many other items. In 1937, after 103 years, Oakville was no longer used as an official port of entry. After decades of being abandoned, Hazel Chisholm restored the custom house in the 1930s and eventually moved in with her family. Museum staff say that Robert Chisholm's spirit remains in the custom house. Typewriters tap alone, shades plummet inexplicably, and office equipment malfunctions. One staffer arrived to lights flashing wildly, then a ceiling shade nearly struck them. By 1856, 38-year-old Robert got engaged to a young 19-year-old woman from Rochester, Flora Matilda Lewis, or Tilly as she was known. They married in 1858. He built the southwest extension of the house, known as the Big House, for her as a wedding present. It was influenced by the popularity of the Italianate style, and the solid square house displays a bracketed cornice and rooftop widow's walk. So now, the house was all connected as we see it today. It became known as Erchless Estate, meaning by the water, named after the Chisholm clan seat in Inverness-shire, Scotland. Just before we turn the corner of the path, note the start of the rock garden leading down to the water. The rock garden on the estate was originally commissioned by Imelda Beeler Chisholm in 1924, and it has been meticulously restored and maintained to its historic appearance based on early 20th century photographs. I will talk a bit more about Imelda's story later on. The landscape architects hired for the project were Howard and Laurie Dunnington Grubb, who also founded Sheridan Nurseries. At the time, the rock garden was one of the earliest gardens constructed in the era of country estate development in Oakville. Take a few minutes to walk up and down the path through the beautiful rock gardens. They are enjoyed by both people and nature and are well worth the visit. But long before the rock garden in the south part of the garden was installed, the landscape and views from the house looked very different. Many of the trees had been cleared away, and a large, gently terraced, grassy area led down to the water where a line of trees were left for privacy reasons. A grass tennis court was nestled in the bottom corner of the yard. Not too far away was a tall windmill used to pump water from the creek to a water tower for domestic use, livestock, and irrigating the lawns and gardens. You can see the terrace slope is long gone, and many native trees and bushes have been replanted in the area. As we turn the corner of the path and look right, we can see the full extent and growth of the house, starting with the original 1837 brick building on the left, the additional 1.5-story midsection with its upper balcony and the lower porch, and finally the southern addition known as the Big House. If you had not noticed before, stand back a bit and look up on the roof on the right side of the southern addition. On top you'll see what is known as a widow's walk. A widow's walk is a railed rooftop platform found on 19th century coastal houses. The name is attributed to the idea that wives of mariners would watch for their husband's return from sea, sometimes in vain, leading to the name Widow's Walk. These platforms were also called captain's walks or roof walks, sometimes serving as lookouts for ships or for putting out rooftop fires. R.K. and Tilly raised 5 children in the house. Robert died aged 80 in 1899, having served as the customs collector and postmaster for about 60 years, among many other roles. Flora remained in the house with their son, Alan Stewart Chisholm. Alan made many improvements to the estate, some not to the liking of his mother, it is said. Many of them were made while his mother was away visiting her family in Rochester. Alan was responsible for clearing away many of the trees on the property, opening up the views to the lake. He created the terraced lawn we spoke of earlier and added the tennis court and a boathouse. The path we are walking on was close to where the modified carriageway was built from King Street to the porch door. Of course, no elegant estate is complete without an ornamental gate, which we will see properly at the end of our walk. He made many other changes, as you will soon see. Walking further down the path, away from the house, we see the north lawn and a few buildings in the distance, which we will get to shortly. But for now, I want to take you off the path across the grass to the north wall of the original brick building. Looking up at the north wall, you see evidence of renovations and building changes, including the original entrance. On the northeast corner, the original door was converted to a window, likely when the porch door became the main entrance. So heading back across the grass toward the harbor, away from the car park, back to the path, we come to a low retaining wall and a small garden. The location of this small rock landscape feature is approximately where Alan built the large water tower. The Chisholms did not always own Block 53, where we now stand. It had various owners before they acquired it. In this location was an early frame house. The house was moved across the way and still stands today. It is known as the 1830 Captain William Wilson's house and is now relocated to 45 Navy Street. The water tower was built on the foundation of the William Wilson house after it was moved. When the water tower was eventually removed, remnant walls became a garden pool and a fish pond, and eventually some of the foundation rocks made up part of this small rock garden. Now turn around and face the harbor again for a minute. You remember I said earlier the second lighthouse was moved in 1960 to the Oakville Yacht Squadron? Well, if you look across the creek to the west bank, past the trees and the boats, you should be able to see that 1889 lighthouse still standing tall and proud today. Of course, what you actually see depends on the time of year and how thick the foliage is, but trust me, it is there. By now you'll have noticed the moose and wolf sculptures on the grounds. These are a modern addition to the estate. These sculptures were created by Bert Jackson and Steve Hudak. The statues were originally unveiled at the Oakville Humane's fundraising event, Cause for Paws, in 2008. They received such a wonderful response from the public that they were eventually donated to the town of Oakville to commemorate 25 years of sisterhood with Oakville's sister city, Nayagawa, Japan. Consequently, they found a permanent home at the Erchless Estate in 2009. Bronze replicas of the statues were sent to Nayagawa in appreciation for the many years of the 25-year association. There are over 30 different species of trees found on the estate grounds. Many of the beautiful trees are tagged and are quite mature, dating back to the early days of the estate. As we reach the corner of the path, there are two things of note. The small square where once stood the remnants of Captain William Wilson's hand pump that would have drawn water from a well at the time, and a building that was once two separate cottages, which have since been combined into one building. Unfortunately, the hand pump was recently vandalized and is no longer visible. The original cottages were built in the 1950s for Hazel Matthews and Dr. Juliet Turner, great-granddaughters of William and Rebecca Chisholm. They are built where there was once a vegetable garden, a greenhouse, and a garden storage area, which were built by Alan Chisholm, but it had rotted away over time. Decorative paving from the original greenhouse remains in the area. The ornamental fountain that can be seen in the spring and the summer months was installed in 2006 by the Oakville Historical Society in recognition of its many volunteers. Hazel Matthews was a founding member of the Oakville Historical Society in 1953. The building next to the cottage is known as the Coach House. The current 1924 building replaced the original 1898 coach house built by John Alexander Chisholm, which burnt down in 1923. It is said that echoes of the fire can be heard on the anniversary date. On the left side of the building is where the stables were located. In the middle was where the carriages were stored and maintained, and at the end was a gardener's cottage. William Hunt lived in the tiny cottage and raised 5 children there. In 1919, William and others were asked to swear that the lands around Erchless had always belonged to Robert Kerr Chisholm and his successors. If you walk down the left side of the coach house, you will see the former manure pit for the horses' output. Of course, it has not been used for that purpose in almost 100 years. If you get a chance to go inside the coach house, you can still see some of the horse stalls showing years of the hoof marks inside the renovated building. It has served multiple roles throughout the years, including storage for the Oakville Museum and even housing Dr. Juliet Chisholm Turney's pediatrics practice. Around 1910, Alan Chisholm became one of the first people to own an automobile in Oakville. Guess where he would have parked it? In 2021, the building was fully rehabilitated and transformed into a multi-purpose venue for museum and community programming. Given that many horses and wagons would have been coming and going from the area to and from the ships, a blacksmith shop in this location would have also made sense. During recent renovations of the coach house, it was discovered that indeed a blacksmith shop had been in the area where the coach house is now located. Alan Stewart Chisholm passed on in 1918 with no successor, and his mother Flora Tilley, who had continued to live at the estate after Robert's death, also died in 1918. Some say that Tilley's spirit can be seen sometimes on the upstairs balcony in the midsection over the porch. The estate was in danger of falling out of the Chisholm family at this time and was put up for sale by Alan's siblings. Across the way, in what is now Lakeside Park, was the summer home of John Alexander Chisholm and his wife Imelda Beeler Chisholm. It was known as Mount Vernon. Imelda's husband John had passed away in 1903 of typhoid fever. Imelda did not want to see the Erchless Estate leave the Chisholm family, so she sold the Mount Vernon estate and purchased the Erchless Estate and used it as her new summer home. When she came to stay, she often came with her 2 daughters, Hazel and Juliet. They lived at the Erchless Estate during the summers until her death in 1951. After Imelda's death, her daughters Hazel and Juliet inherited the estate. Hazel lived in the newly renovated custom house, and then she later built and moved into one of the 2 cottages on the estate. Her sister Juliet also lived on the estate with her family until she moved into the other cottage. The estate had become too large and expensive to maintain for the family, so the main building was subdivided into 3 apartments for a while. Dr. Grace Juliet Chisholm Turney died in 1964, and Hazel Chisholm Hart Matthews died in 1978, but not before adding to the overall Erchless and Chisholm legacy. When Juliet died in 1964, ownership of the Erchless Estate had already been transferred to Hazel's son Monty and his wife Margot. They raised 4 children on the estate. This was the last generation of the Chisholm family to own and live at Erchless. Erchless was sold by 1957, and ownership had passed out of the Chisholm family after 120 years. The estate passed through 2 different owners after that, and sadly was left standing empty for several years. The town of Oakville purchased it in 1977, and the final tenants moved out in 1989. The Erchless family home and estate became a museum and was open to the public on May 18, 1991. Coming to the end of our walk today, we find a magnificent gate and stone posts where the original carriage path started. Alan Chisholm, as an enthusiastic woodworker, built these gates himself, and it is a testament to his craftsmanship and to the Chisholm legacy that they are still standing today. All of the Chisholm family members mentioned in this video are buried in the Oakville and St. Mary's Cemetery today. Many relatives of the various legacy families continue to live in the Oakville area and are understandably very proud of their family histories and continued contributions to Oakville and the surrounding area. We've covered a great deal of important historical information today, so let's take a few minutes to just enjoy the beautiful estate gardens one last time. That concludes our walk around the Erchless Estate, but if you have a few more minutes to walk across the road into Lakeside Park, there are 3 more historical buildings that may be of interest to you while you are in the area. All 3 buildings have been relocated to this park from their original locations over time. The first is the bandstand. Originally built in 1908, it has been rebuilt a few times over the years, including as recently as 2019. It is both decorative and functional, and is used every year as it was intended when it was originally built, to entertain a crowd. The second building is the 1829 Thomas House, which is owned and managed by the Oakville Historical Society. Merrick Thomas was a good friend of William Chisholm, the founder of Oakville. In fact, Merrick helped him plan and build the town. The house is maintained in its original 1830-1840 time period and is open to the public at various times between May and September. Stop by and you might even get a fresh baked cookie. Next door to the Thomas house is Oakville's first post office. Yes, the same one that William and Robert Chisholm managed at one time. Built in 1835, it is owned and managed by the town of Oakville's museum. This building is open at various times between May and September as well, and here you can learn about Canada's early postal system and even practice your writing with a real quill pen. We hope that you have enjoyed this virtual walk through an important part of Oakville's past, learning a bit about the Erchless Estate and the family that lived in it for generations. I encourage you to take the time to visit the museum in the main building and the Oakville Historical Society in the cottages on the grounds to learn more about Oakville's rich and diverse history. Looking for more great content like this? Why not check out the Oakville Historical Society's website, YouTube channel, or Facebook and Instagram pages.